Hey, welcome. Today, we're going to dive into the choices you make online pretty much every single day. We're going to explore our, let's say, complicated relationship with artificial intelligence and what all of that means for our own autonomy. So, let me just start with a question for you. Imagine you get a piece of advice, the exact same words, okay? But one time it comes from a top expert in the field, another time it's from a friend or a colleague, and the third time it's from an AI like ChatGPT. Who do you trust the most, and why? And how about this one? Come on, you know you've been there. You're faced with this giant wall of text, you're in a hurry, and there's that little box just begging you to click I agree. So you do. But what did you actually just agree to? Look, these aren't just random thought experiments. In fact, right now, researchers are designing some really fascinating experiments to get to the bottom of these exact modern-day dilemmas. They're trying to figure out how we evaluate information and what consent even really means in our digital lives. So that brings us to our first deep dive here, which we're calling the Great Trust Experiment. It's all about how we decide what and who to believe when you're online. The big question they're trying to answer is actually pretty straightforward, but it's also, huge. How do we judge a piece of information when the source could be a human expert, a friend, or a super sophisticated algorithm? What's actually shaping our sense of trust? The way they set this up is actually really clever. Researchers give a scenario to hundreds of different people, but there's a little twist. They change only one thing, the source of a key piece of info. Then they just sit back and measure how everyone's trust level changes. Let's see how that plays out. Okay, so in the first version, you have participants reading about a journalist who's writing an article on road safety. The big claim they read comes from a specialist researcher in that field, a totally credible expert source. Now, in the second version, the journalist is the same, the article is the same, and the claim is exactly the same. But this time, the information comes from just a casual chat with a colleague, a non-expert, just a regular person. And in the final version, you guessed it, everything's identical, except this time, the journalist gets the info by asking an AI. See what they did? By keeping the claim the same across the board, the researchers can perfectly isolate how much the source alone changes how much we trust something. Pretty smart. Now, what's really going on here, psychologically, is a test of something called epistemic vigilance. It's a bit of a mouthful, but you can just think of it as your brain's built-in fact checker. It's that gut check we all do to weigh how credible a source is and whether what they're telling us sounds legit. So what was the prediction? Well, their main hypothesis was pretty obvious. We'd trust the expert the most by a long shot. But here's where it gets interesting. They also predicted we would trust the AI more than the non-expert human. That puts the AI in this really weird middle ground of credibility. Okay, let's switch gears and move on to the next experiment. This one tackles a problem that, let's be honest, every single one of us deals with. The I agree dilemma. So get this. Researchers actually calculated how long it would take the average person to read every single privacy policy they bump into in a typical day online. The number they landed on? An absolutely staggering 40 minutes per day. So this begs a really important question, right? If the system is basically designed to be unreadable, to be impossible to keep up with, then who's really responsible when something goes wrong? Is it on you for clicking the button, or is it on the company for designing the trap in the first place? This leads us to another key idea. Get ready for a big phrase: hermeneutical injustice. It sounds complicated, but it describes something we have all felt. It's when a system is made so confusing that it puts you at an unfair disadvantage. A much easier way to think about it? Just call it the fine print trap. And this just perfectly lays out the core conflict, doesn't it? In this second experiment, what researchers do is they give people a scenario where someone agrees to terms they didn't read, and then they get hit with a penalty. The whole point is to see what makes us blame the user versus what makes us blame the company. To figure this out, they start playing with a few different variables to see how our sense of fairness shifts. For instance, does it matter if the terms and conditions are 1 page long versus 100 pages long? What if it seems like the company knows that no one is actually reading them? These are the kinds of tweaks that help them pinpoint where we draw the line on responsibility. So what is the point of all this? Where is all this research leading? Well, it's all about trying to build a smarter and, frankly, a fair internet for all of us. Now, it's really important to remember that these experiments are still running.
The data is still coming in. So the goal right now isn't about having all the final answers. It's about asking the right questions so we can guide how we design technology and policy in the future.
What the research seems to be pointing to is a kind of two-part solution. On the one hand, we absolutely need to empower users, boost AI literacy, build up our critical thinking skills. But on the other hand, the burden can't just be on us. We also need to regulate the system and push companies to design things that are more transparent and fair right from the get-go. Which really leaves us with this one big thought to chew on. In a world that's being more and more shaped by algorithms and these impossibly complex digital agreements, who really has the greater responsibility to be fair? Is it you, the individual trying to navigate it all, or is it the systems and the companies that built the maze in the first place? Thanks for joining me.